The Cincinnati Bengals are 7-4 and are most recently coming off of a win against the Tennessee Titans. This was a huge win for Cincinnati, and the difference between 6-5 and 7-4 is astronomical, especially when the Baltimore Ravens lost to the Jacksonville Jaguars on the same day. The Bengals beat the Titans in what was a rematch of a divisional round playoff game from a year ago, and there is no doubt the Titans had this game circled since the schedule was released in May. How would the Bengals respond to not just a team's 100%, but a team's 110% given how pissed off the Titans were going to play in this game? And the Bengals more than responded. This was in a game without Pro Bowl running back Joe Mixon, and in a game without star receiver Jamar Chase, and they responded with a 20-16 win, and the Cincinnati Bengals are peaking at the right time. They have more than just Joe Burrow and the boys on offense, and there is a lot to dive into in today's video, and without further ado, let's begin. The Cincinnati Bengals defense has allowed just 88 points in the second half or overtime in 2022, which comes to an average of 8 points during this portion of the game. When you dig a little further in this, they gave up 21 to Cleveland in the second half of that game, in which they were beat handedly by the Browns, and they gave up 21 to Carolina in the game Joe Mixon scored 5 touchdowns. Within the Carolina game, Cincinnati was up 35-0 at half, and Carolina scored 3 touchdowns in a game that was very much in control. So while those 21 points they scored do contribute to the second half points total the Bengals have allowed, the context has to be remembered. And if you take away that game, then the Bengals have allowed 67 points in the second half on the season in 10 games, which would equate to just 6.7 per game. The defense has been balling, and when you can hold opposing offenses to bad second halves like Cincy has, given the horses they have on offense, you're going to win a lot of games, and not surprisingly, they have. And after starting out 0-2, in which they suffered losses to the Pittsburgh Steelers at home and to the Cooper Rush-led Dallas Cowboys, Cincy has found their groove and they are 7-2 since. Within the first 2 games, Joe Burrow was sacked a combined 13 times, and a lot of Bengals fans were thinking, great, we spent all this money offseason for our guy and the leader of our franchise to get absolutely killed time and time again for the second consecutive season. And in the 9 games since, Joe has been sacked, I don't want to say just 20 times, but 20 times in 9 games is a hell of a lot less than 13 times in 2, and within this 9-game stretch, there was a clear outlier, and that was the disastrous Monday night game in Cleveland. Joe was sacked 5 times, and in the 3 games since, he has been sacked just 4 times. So for all of the Bengals fans that were understandably stressing back in weeks 1 and 2, when TJ Watt, Alex Highsmith, and Micah Parsons were feasting on the Bengals offensive line, they've put it together over the past few weeks, and this is a big reason why they are heating up at the right time. The biggest thing with Cincinnati is they have to keep Joe Burrow upright. He was sacked 9 times in a game against the Titans in the playoffs last year, and another 7 in the Super Bowl against the Rams. And within their postseason run last year, Joe Burrow set a record that nobody wants to break and no offensive lineman wants to be a part of, and that's that he was the most sacked quarterback in a single postseason. Burrow also lost the most yards on sacks in a single postseason as well, as he was sacked 19 times and lost 137 yards on these sacks. Even with Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, and everyone else, getting sacked that many times over the course of a 4-game span is a recipe for losing, and they were lucky they won the Tennessee playoff game to begin with. While the Bengals' recent success has a lot to do with them heating up at the right time, it's also how they won these games too. Jamar Chase sustained a hip injury against the Saints and re-aggravated the injury against the Falcons. He has not played since, but is expected to play in a very big game against the Chiefs in Week 13. They went 3-1 with not just one of the best players on the team, but one of the best players in the league out, and during this stretch, T. Higgins stepped up in a big way. He had 2 100-yard games, including a 7-catch, 114-yard performance against the Titans, where the Bengals were very much against the wall. No Joe Mixon, no Jamar, so who are the Titans going to try and keen in on? The obvious choice was T. Higgins, but he had a hell of a performance in a critical win. And it's this next man up mentality from the Bengals that will take them a long way. And ever since Jamar was drafted, he won the Offensive Rookie of the Year award and set a franchise record for most receiving yards in a single season. And that was in Chase's rookie year. I'm not saying T is sick of his teammates' success by any means, please don't take it that way, but T has more than reminded everyone that, hey, Jamar is not the only big receiver here. And to further this, a lot of people heading into 2022 when discussing T. Higgins would say something along the lines of, yeah, he's a good number 2, or he puts up numbers because of Jamar and the whole 9. Believe me, I'm sure you guys have heard the whole rundown on T. Higgins. But in a 2-game span on the road against the Pittsburgh Steelers, who always play the Bengals tough, and in a game against the Tennessee Titans, who wanted to win this in the absolute worst way, he put up 16 catches for 262 yards and a touchdown, and there is a legitimate conversation of whether or not the Bengals have 2 top 10 receivers in Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. And this was a critical period for Higgins because this was his chance to not only produce for himself and the team, but for as simple as this sounds, to make other teams think heading into each week, oh shit, we have 2 great receivers to game plan for, and if we want to double team both of them, then we have to cover a 3rd receiver in Tyler Boyd, who in reality would be a number 2 receiver on most NFL teams. Oh guys, and by the way, they also have a Pro Bowl running back as well. They are a nightmare to game plan against, and it's very easy to think, okay, cool, this team can put up points, but their defense has given up the 10th fewest points in the NFL this year, and with how good they are in the second halves of games, that gets in the team's heads because they start to press and think, oh boy, this defense really is that good in the 3rd and 4th quarter, and with Cincinnati, especially the 3rd quarter defense. I'm not going to read every statistic in terms of where they rank defensively, in terms of yards allowed and turnovers, but for the most part they hover around the 10th best in the NFL, with some spots varying more than others. There are no glaring team statistics on this side of the ball other than them being routinely good. Not average and not elite, but good. And that's what the Bengals need. You often hear with teams like the New York Jets that if they had an average quarterback, they could make a deep postseason run, and the opposite is true for the Bengals. If they have an above-average defense, which they do, they could easily make another deep postseason run, not just in 2022, but for a lot of years moving forward. Cincy did have some postseason luck last year when the Bills and Chiefs met in the divisional round of the playoffs, and instead of facing Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes in back-to-back weeks, they faced Ryan Tannehill and Patrick Mahomes in back-to-back weeks, and they beat the Chiefs, which is not an easy thing to do, and all the credit goes to Cincinnati for accomplishing that. But instead of a big 2 this year with the Bengals on the outside looking in, because they were the outsiders last year, it's almost like there's a big 4 this year. This is in no order, but the big 4 in the AFC would presumably be the Chiefs, Bengals, Bills, and Dolphins. And at some point, these teams are going to meet each other with the season on the line, and seeding is going to play a part within this. This also does not count out the Baltimore Ravens, who are leading the AFC North at the moment. I just wanted that to be clear. More than likely, a team is going to have to get some help in a big way in January, and what I mean by that is not face in consecutive weeks Allen, Burrow, and Mahomes, or Tua, Mahomes, and Burrow, and you get the point. The Bengals are going to be more than battle-tested as they enter the postseason, as they play Kansas City this weekend, then play the Browns, a team they always have a hard time playing, Bucks, Patriots, the Bills on Monday night, and home against the Ravens to finish their season. This is almost a playoff schedule on its own before the playoffs get here. So the Bengals having some luck in the postseason, along with everyone else for that matter, is going to play a part in how far they each get this year. But more so than last year, I believe in the Cincinnati Bengals. I didn't think a playoff win over the Raiders, considering the 2021 season the Raiders had with the Henry Ruggs incident and firing John Gruden, was all that impressive for Cincy, or in a game where Ryan Tannehill threw 3 interceptions. And I understand they nor anyone can control who they play, but when they beat the Patrick Mahomes-led Chiefs in what was a 3-score comeback win with everything on the line, that was when I bought in with this team. I was also quick to count them out when they were 0-2 this year after their offensive line was destroyed, as I thought it was going to be another year of Joe Burrow getting killed. But the Bengals have clawed and scratched their way back to 7-4. Are they going to win every game from here to the Super Bowl? No. There's a chance they lose this Sunday to the Chiefs, as the Bengals are coming off of a hard-fought win against the Tennessee Titans, while the Chiefs are coming off of a win over the Bryce Perkins-led Rams. Regardless of how this game plays out, I am all in on the Bengals and think they are clicking at the right time. They're getting Jamar back, and when times look tough, when it was announced he was going to miss a few games, they went 3-1 without him and proved it is a next man up mentality in the Queen City. And they have a pretty good quarterback too. I believe in the Cincinnati Bengals and think they are in some ways underrated, with the Dolphins being the new team on the block, and with how much people love Josh and Patrick Mahomes. And to be completely honest, guys, I think the Bengals and their fan base would prefer it that way, and they will let the play do all the talking. And that's all I have for today's video. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, please like the video and subscribe to the channel, as it would mean the world. And until next time, as always, please be safe and have a great day. Love you guys.